So more stores are opening than closing, but what stores and where are they going? We're going to be talking about digital natives, new IKEA formats, clothing, and more. All of that, plus the retail challenge right now on everything we know about retail. My name is James Cook, coming to you from Indiana. Ebere Anokute is in New York. What's up, Ebere?
How you doing, James? How's it going?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm excited to get into it. You all are watching Everything We Know About Retail, where we tell you all everything we know about retail, and we do it 3 things at a time. Today, we're taking one segment that we do normally as part of a show, and we are expanding it to the entire show. And that is a new store opens. So this week we're talking all about new store openings, who's opening, what the formats are, where they're planning to open. I've got some stuff to share with you. You've got some stuff to share with me, right?
I do. I absolutely do.
Okay, so let's get into it. Here's the first thing that we know about retail. More spaces have been leased than vacated for quite some time now. In fact, most years, more stores open than close, except for last year. Last year, 2020, we saw around 25 million square feet of negative absorption. Absorption's just the change in occupied space. So it's like net vacant space was 25 million square feet. Let me put that in real world terms. That is 5 malls of America.
Wow.
So yeah, it's a lot of retail. But here's the good news. So far, just in the first half of 2021, we've already had about 25 million square feet of positive absorption. So think about that whiplash. 1 year, we lose 5 malls of America. And the next, just in the first half of this year, we've added them back. So a lot of new stores are opening. The question is who? One of the things that we do as retail researchers is we track all of the new store openings and closings. Just in general, a lot of it is discount variety, especially dollar stores. We've talked about it on this show, like Dollar General opened 1,000 last year. They're opening about 1,000 new stores this year. A lot of fast food, fast casual, clothing, accessories, some health, beauty, and fitness. So basically a lot of different categories, sort of more trending toward the discount, but there's a lot of non-discount retailers that are opening too. One of the researchers I like to track is Keith Hamilton at PNC Bank. He does a monthly research newsletter where he rounds up all the new store openings announcements and the closing announcements. So I thought I'd share with you, Ebere, the top 3 opening announcements for September. So yeah.
Can I say, James, that funny enough, I actually used to work on this project. I'm pretty sure with Keith back when I worked at ICSC. One of my tasks was to go through the the news and to round up all the new store openings. So when I saw you list that there, I was like, this is all of my worlds colliding all at once.
No way. I didn't realize. So yes, Ebere, formerly a researcher at the International Council of Shopping Centers. So you guys would actually partner with Keith on compiling that research?
Yes, we did. It was my job to go through, any Google alerts I could find, search through all the news headlines. I, would type in "to open" in quotes in Google, and then just write down anything that we could find about announced store openings, things like that. And we did it in a partnership with PNC. So very, very cool to see this coming back around.
That's funny. Yeah, well, the big openings, the retailers want you to know about it. So there's usually a press release. So it's pretty the data's out there. The work is just, as you say, compiling it all. So it is like a lot of Googling and going through different sources. So what I think is interesting about September, a lot of mall-based announcements. So the first one is from Torrid, which is a mostly mall-based, although you'll see them in some street locations and obviously in lifestyle centers too. But they are women's apparel for women's size 10 to 30. what's interesting is obviously during COVID in 2020, sales numbers were not great, but they have totally recovered to the point where in Q2 of this year, their sales, same store sales, were 26% higher than 2019.
Wow.
So, I mean, it makes sense. People, especially, are getting back into the worlds of going out again, hanging out with friends, going to work again. So you need nicer work clothing. And there are a ton of Torrid locations across the US. They've announced 25 more this year, and they said 25 more every year in the future as well.
That's amazing.
Yeah. A lot of new locations for a really, what I would say is a bread and butter mall-based retailer. So there's really recovery there.
Definitely. I feel like I've only ever seen a Torrid in the mall, so I'm surprised to hear that they have them, on street locations too.
Right. Yeah. Well, and our next announcer is also mall-based, but not as traditional. It's Psycho Bunny. Are you familiar with Psycho Bunny?
James, I have never heard those two words next to each other. I'll tell you that.
So it's menswear, and it's mall. Their stores, they both sell through like Nordstrom. You can get them at Nordstrom. Here, I'll show you what it looks like. It's this right here.
Okay.
It's logo clothing, very popular, the polo shirt. So it's sort of like you can be casual, or you can kind of be business casual, but still a little bit edgy because it's got a Psycho Bunny logo.
For sure.
There were 16 new announced Psycho Bunny locations in September. Most of them were at Simon Malls. 11 of them were at Simon Malls. They're going to be, once all those new stores open, there's going to be 29 Psycho Bunny locations. And they go to malls because that's where the foot traffic is. I think there was this sense, especially with, clothing that's not your traditional mall-based apparel like Psycho Bunny, that maybe they'd be going to High Street, or whatever, Fifth Avenue or something like that, Soho. But the foot traffic's in the malls right now.
For sure. Is there any significance to them being at Simon Malls versus malls owned by other operators like GGP or Brookfield? Like, is there a relationship there, or it just happens to be that way?
They have locations in other non-Simon malls. I think they just did probably some kind of group deal with them. Simon's very good about tracking new up-and-coming brands and trying to get them into their malls. They really want people to have this sense that if you go to a Simon mall, you're going to get, whatever that new, digital native is, that new cool boutique or brand or whatever.
Absolutely.
And, really all of the big mall owners do that. But I just know that, from having, interactions with Simon folks, that they spend a lot of time targeting, what's the new hot retailer.
That's cool.
And our number 3 for top new store opening announcements in September is Miniso. Are you familiar? You shop at all at Miniso?
I never have. I've definitely heard the name before, but I don't think I've ever entered one of those stores.
Probably because you are in New York and they are only now expanding on the East Coast. In fact, they just announced 10 new East Coast stores, which is going to bring their US total to 50. Wow. So Miniso, I thought they were a Japanese brand. They're not. They're actually a Chinese brand that's Japanese inspired.
I can see the inspiration in the logo for sure.
Right. So, I mean, if you were to say, I would say, okay, it's Japanese dollar store is the theme, but the price points are higher. Their kind of key price point target is going to be $10. And they're kind of really looking to dominate that $10 price point.
Sure.
And there are others in addition to Miniso. Daiso is another one. A few more. I've seen a lot more in Canada than I have in the US so far. I think that, especially in Vancouver, for example, there's a lot of, Asian influence there. But there's kind of like a growing raft of these sort of discount hip dollar chains or discount chains that sort of are appealing because, it allows you to get something new, but you're not spending an arm and a leg for it.
That's really cool.
Yeah. So those are the three newest announced retailers. I mean, there's so much more. I just picked, hey, what's the most recent that had some big numbers associated with it? So those are the top three. What's interesting to me is a lot of mall action in those. A lot of mall-based retail with new locations announced.
Absolutely. That's really interesting that's where the foot traffic is these days. I mean, I guess that makes sense given, people like you and myself working from home at this moment, not really in the offices and in the more, heavily populated central business districts anymore, or at the moment, so to speak. But yeah, I definitely have visited the mall a couple times over the course of the past year or so, and probably more so than I would have before. So I can see why they would, be making that choice to go to the mall instead of on the street.
Yeah. All right. Well, Ebere, what do you know about retail?
Well, James, here is the second thing that we know about retail. So, in continuing, obviously, with the theme of store openings, something that's really interesting is that a lot of these new retailers that are opening stores pretty aggressively are digitally native brands, right? Digitally native brands, if that term isn't self-explanatory, are brands that started online and were, operating direct to consumer initially, and have in recent years realized that there is some vitality and importance to the physical storefront, which we love here at JLO. We love to hear that. And so they've been opening, these physical stores as touch points for the brand, right? They operate as billboards. They're good for marketing. In some cases, they help to increase sales in store, but more often than not, it's just more, like I said, a marketing piece, for these brands. So a lot of them were already expanding pre-pandemic, as we know, and honestly, it's their prowess in e-commerce that has allowed them to stay alive through the pandemic and is allowing them to be aggressive now with their expansion. So some of the ones that we know, the popular ones are like Untuckit, Bonobos, Allbirds, Away. I'm curious, James, are you a fan of any of those brands? Do you have any items from Untuckit or Bonobos? I've never shopped there myself, but I've always thought that I would like to go in.
I've browsed. I don't think I've purchased though. I'm pretty boring, Ebere. I mean, I'm not like this is Banana Republic,
Okay.
Yeah,
I
I'm
love
not.
Banana Republic. I love them.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't mean to say Banana Republic is boring, but it's also not brand new.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of am like, pretty traditional. I like to look good, but I'm not gonna like whatever. I don't know what I'm saying. I'm sure I could wear an Untuckit shirt and just be happy with it too.
Yeah, for sure. No, and a lot of my friends are really into Allbirds. A lot of them have those sneakers. They've been going crazy for the past few years. I haven't shopped any of those places either, Untuckit or Bonobos, but I've always thought about it. And, I think just like, especially with Untuckit and their philosophy on like not tucking the shirt in, I've been, trying to do that myself when I go to the office, stage a little quiet rebellion and not tuck my own shirt in, just leave my shirt free flowing. So I'm sure I would love Untuckit if I, got a chance to go into one of those stores. But another one of these retailers that we all know about is Warby Parker. James, you wear glasses, right?
I do. Yeah, I'm nearsighted, so I don't have them on right now, but most of the time I'm in glasses.
Yep, me too. I got mine right here. These are not Warby. These are from another online retailer called Zenni Optical. Shout out to them. They, make really cool glasses as well. But Warby, I used to have a pair of those, and I really want to get another one. They recently filed their IPO. They went public, and they said in the, statement for the initial public offering said that expanding their physical footprint would be a part of their strategy to sustain revenue growth going forward. So they have announced that they're going to open 30 to 35 new stores this year. Here's a picture of their store in New York City. I actually went to this store to get my eye exam for the first pair of Warby's that I got, because although they have a location in Grand Central, which is right next to the JLO office at 330 Madison, they don't do eye exams there. So I had to go up to this one on 82nd Street to get my exam. So when I saw this picture in all the articles, I was like, hey, I've been there before. So they're opening 30 to 35 new stores this year, which is going to bring their total to 160. And it's crazy to think that they just started their operations, a little over 10 years ago, right back in 2010, I believe. And I tried to find when they opened their first physical store. I could not find it online, but if I were to guess, like, or just think back to when I started to see them pop up, it wouldn't be more than maybe 5, 6 years ago. Would you say the same, James?
Yeah, their first store was in their offices in Manhattan. And
Okay.
it was just kind of like, hey, we should, at least have one physical location. But it's
There.
really, yeah, really ballooned since then. I know last time I checked in on them and did a deep dive, 50% of their revenue was coming from their physical stores. So that's
Yeah.
huge.
That's huge, especially like we said, for one of these brands that started online. It just shows how important it's been for them and for their growth to open these new physical locations. So they are obviously continuing to expand aggressively, and I doubt that's going to stop anytime soon because they've been seeing a lot of success from it. So we'll see what comes of Warby Parker in the years to come. But another company that is doing the same is Fabletics, right? So Fabletics is an athleisure brand that's owned or founded by Kate Hudson, the
I think
actress.
she's a partial owner in it
Okay,
now.
okay,
Yeah.
sure. The language gets so I
Right.
don't want to lie about her and what
She's
she
certainly
owns
the
or doesn't
face of
own.
the brand.
Yeah, exactly. You Google Fabletics, she's the second or third picture on Google Images is Kate Hudson's face. So she obviously is very involved, and they have announced that they're going to open 24 new stores to add to their existing base of 50 stores. So here is a picture of their store. I believe this is in Bellevue, Washington. So you can see it's a very nice storefront, and again, like I said, they have 50 stores already and plan to open 24 new ones. So they're definitely expanding aggressively as well. Just some other, brands that I read up on that are opening new physical stores are Parachute, which is a home furnishings brand. Have you heard of Parachute? I hadn't heard of them prior to this.
Yeah, I've been to the store I want to say it's Echo Park in LA.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so they are a home furnishings company. Obviously, home furnishings is one of the retail categories that saw a lot of growth throughout the pandemic because they were able to stay open. I think we obviously think about places like Home Depot, Lowe's, and stuff, but that extends also to Parachute or Sleep Number. Any one of these stores that put items in your home. They saw massive gains throughout the pandemic, and so it's no surprise that they're turning that into aggressive expansion plans. And their plan is to open 20 new stores to add to their existing 10 stores. So I don't think that's doubling stores because 10 to 30 is not doubling. It's tripling. Is it triple? I don't know. The math gets a little fuzzy, but they are obviously, going way over what they already have and are definitely clearly very bullish on, physical storefronts and retail as pertains to their business plan. And then another one I'll mention is Purple Innovation, which is a sleep focused brand, is what they said on the press release. And they are adding 20 new stores to their base of 9 stores. So we can see here that this expansion from digitally native retailers is obviously going to continue going forward. I read on Coresight Research that digitally native shoe and apparel brands are expected to grow by 20% this year alone, ultimately reaching $8.4 billion in total sales. So obviously there is a lot of money to be made here, and these brands that we mentioned are at the forefront of it and are definitely going to see a lot of success going forward as a result.
Yeah, I mean, if you own an online brand and you're struggling to distinguish yourself in the marketplace, one way to acquire customers that is now probably more inexpensive is to open up a physical store. So the strategy makes a lot of sense.
Absolutely.
So, Ebere, what else do you know about retail?
Well, James, listen, I know a lot about retail. So here is the third thing that we know about retail. This sort of expansion in physical storefronts is not just something we're seeing in the US. It's something that's happening all across the globe. And, we know that experiential retail these days is the name of the game, right? It continues to be a popular trend as a means of attracting customers into their physical stores, again, as a touch point for the brand, but also getting them to stay in the store and hopefully, lead to some conversion, which is them either buying something, ordering something to get delivered to their house, or buying something online, picking up in store. We're all omni-channel these days. So whatever you need, a retailer that wants to be competitive is going to have it, right? So there are a bunch of new examples all throughout the world. Of course, I picked 2 that are in the US because duh, but those were the most interesting ones that I saw. So the first one that I came across is a new Canada Goose store that opened in Costa Mesa, California. So I'm going to ask you, James, who needs a jacket in California?
It's
In
for
Orange County.
it's for when you go skiing.
There you
in
go.
whatever, in Truckee or wherever, and you go skiing.
Tahoe or something.
Yes, yes,
Yeah, whatever
exactly.
they're doing on that side of the country for sure. I definitely was like Canada Goose because those are very thick jackets, right? That's not a light, it's 50 degrees in LA jacket. That is a thick
No.
Arctic sort of thing to wear. So, and I think they obviously thought about this as well. So here's a picture of the store in Costa Mesa. Gorgeous storefront, I have to say. I think this, it just looks really beautiful. The type of storefront that would make me want to go in there, assuming I could afford Canada Goose jackets, which I don't know about you, James. I do not have $2,000 for a jacket, not yet at least. It's something to aspire to, but today we're not there just yet. But they created something that they're calling a snow room, right? Which is an immersive space in their store that simulates a snowstorm every day. And they say that they're able to reach temperatures as low as -10 degrees, right? So it's very much, imagine a fitting room where you go in and try normal stuff. Imagine going into a fitting room that is -10 degrees just to be sure that the jacket that you're buying will withstand any sort of temperature, any sort of environment. So I think it's a necessary thing on their part because I'm sure when you walk out of there into the Orange County heat, you're probably doubting yourself as to why you wanted to get a Canada Goose jacket. But they actually say that the room was inspired by the climate of Churchill, Manitoba, which is a Canadian city known as the polar bear capital of the world, right? So I can only imagine that it's frigid up there, right? I recently went to Toronto, but it was, late. It was late summer, so it was beautiful up there. But one thing I know about Canada, and one thing that almost deters me from going, is how cold it gets up there. Have you been to Canada, James? Any one of these like really cold parts, like Vancouver or something?
I've been to Canada a lot, but it's always like Toronto or mostly Vancouver, but some other places in British Columbia.
For sure.
Yeah, which, I live in the Midwest of the US. The climate is pretty similar to where I live.
Fair.
I've never been up into the Great White North, like the tundra areas. I can't imagine living in any place colder than it is where I live now. It sounds awful.
Yeah, I can't imagine either, but people are doing it, and that's why Canada Goose is as popular as they are, because you gotta, stay warm up there. So
Yeah,
that's one of the cool new store openings that we're seeing. Another really cool one that I came across is from John Elliott. And they are a they sell men's and women's apparel, just an apparel brand. And they opened their third physical store in New York City just this year. So here is a picture of the inside of the store. And I think here the experience is more so the architecture and the general design of the store. They worked with an architect named Stefan Weimer, I hope I said that correctly, who actually also designed their stores in Los Angeles and Miami, which were their first two. So this is the third. They kept it, with the same design company. And they said that they went for a modular and utilitarian construction. And in the store, they feature 16-foot floor-to-ceiling windows that are meant to connect the shoppers directly with the street level outside, and just give them that sort of feeling of being inside, but also being outside at the same time, and giving them that view to what they call the piazza level street around it. So they opened, I believe, in Soho. I don't want to lie. I think it was on Broome Street. I'm pretty sure it was on Broome Street. And they also feature Japanese white tiles and iridescent surfaces throughout that allow for natural light to bounce all around. And they also feature a lot of tropical bamboo. And they wanted to make sure that they incorporated these elements of nature, which is very important to the brand. So I think this is a really cool example of a physical location that mirrors the aesthetic of the brand, right? They want to make sure that when you come in, you're fully understanding what their intent is, what the brand is all about. And I think that's, a really, really cool example of experiential retail in that case. And then the last one I'll show you, this one, thankfully, is not in the US, because I know I said this was throughout the world, and then I said New York and LA. But this is the Majuri store in London. So Majuri, cool. Yeah, it is a direct-to-consumer jewelry brand. I can't remember the word jewelry for a second. And they are opening a 2-story shop, which you can see the top of it here, or the upper level here, in Marylebone Village in London. Have you heard of that, James?
Marleybone?
Sure, if you say so. It looked like it was Marylebone, but yeah, Marleybone makes a lot more sense. I don't know.
I'm not 100% sure now either. We have at least one UK viewer. I wonder if they're watching. Are we destroying the name of a place that we should know?
probably. James, what is, out of curiosity, what is the like prime shopping district in London called? Like, is there a street that, you know, I know Paris is like the Champs-Elysees. I
Well,
read about
I
Milan
mean, there's
district.
Oxford, and then there's like, I mean, Soho, and then
Right, right.
there's a bunch though. There's an area called Seven Dials that's awesome with tons
Yeah.
of like boutiques and stuff. What I think, not to go off on a tangent, but you know, a lot of cities in the US, there's like one shopping place,
Mhm.
one shopping street, and I feel like London is just packed with different shopping places.
Definitely, definitely. I think London is a way, there's a lot more going on in that city, or a lot more is concentrated in London than we would have here in the US, right? There's more cities to spread it out with, as opposed to the UK, where London seems to be kind of the, you know, cultural, financial, and fashion capital of the country. So that makes sense. But they at Majuri in their new store in London are featuring modular mirrors, which I think you can see in this picture right here, as well as some millwork and jewelry displays that were designed in-house. So again, another example of the brand themselves taking control of the aesthetic and making sure that it matches their brand and everything that they want to do themselves. And they also have a floral feature wall that extends all the way downstairs into their lounge area, where you can relax, get some style advice, or shop some more exclusive collections that are not necessarily available upstairs to the broader consumers and public and stuff like that. So definitely, I think the lounging aspect of it is one of the more enduring aspects of this experiential retail trend, right? Wanting to get people to come in, feel comfortable, stick around, and hopefully that'll convert into some, you know, money being spent. So just another cool example of a brand taking control of their aesthetic and opening a really, really cool store that I'm sure is going to be, you know, really successful for them. So a lot of exciting store openings happening all across the world, in London and New York and LA. But yeah, we're really excited to see it.
Yeah, and we recognize, you know, as I said, I live in the Midwest, so we recognize that these major cities aren't the only things in the world of retail. It's just often seems like the new stuff hits the big cities first, so we tend to talk about those more.
Yeah, very
Um,
true.
but we should do like an episode on like obscure, interesting retail that's popping up in the non-major cities.
Yeah, that sounds really cool.
But that's for another day, because right now, Eber, it's time for the retail challenge.
Sure is.
That's right. So the retail challenge is where I'm going to ask Eber 3 questions. He's going to get a point per question. If he gets, what are we saying, more than 2 points, you win. So more than 2 questions right, you win. If you guys are watching along at home, type your answers into the comments section and be the first in the chat to give the correct answer to a question. You'll win the eternal admiration of your peers. So let's go, Eberry. This week's theme is IKEA. Are you an IKEA shopper?
I'm not, you know, I for whatever reason, I never really got into them. I think when I started looking for furniture, I was more into Wayfair and stuff like that. But I respect, you know, what IKEA has done for, you know, recent graduates, apartments, and people like that all throughout the years.
Have you've been to IKEA stores though, right?
I haven't. I've never
Oh my
been to one.
gosh. You're aware though of the stuff that makes IKEA special?
Meatballs. Am I right?
That is one of the things. Yeah.
Okay.
So this, what you're seeing on your screen, is a traditional IKEA store. They're like, you know, say 400,000 square feet. They're big. They're often on the edge of town.
Sure.
They are often here. Check this out. Here's a store map. They're a labyrinth.
Damn.
The way they are organized is it's all this back and forth, up and down. There's like one way that everybody has to go.
Really?
So you're kind of forced to go through the entire store. Now, that's not completely true. There's some, I have friends who are big IKEA shoppers who know where all the secret pass-throughs are, the shortcuts. They're actually labeled here on the map. There's different shortcuts. But if you're an occasional shopper, you're really, you know, forced to go through the entire labyrinth. So, I mean, the IKEA journey is, you know, a couple of hours, you know, if you're going to IKEA, and then at near the end, it stops you off at the cafe where you can have the Swedish meatballs or the different foods. So that is the traditional IKEA. Almost most IKEAs are like that, right? But they now have this 3-tiered format. So we've got the big stores that we talked about. Up next is a smaller urban store.
Mm-hmm.
So these are more like 120, 115, 120,000 square feet. The first one just opened up in Queens in the US, the first US of these smaller formats.
Sure.
It's in Rego Park in Queens, opened in January. Slim down, focus on stuff that apartment dwellers need, or people in condos who are more likely to live in New York.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally, the third prong of the expansion tier for IKEA is the design store. So this is the first design store that opened in Manhattan in 2019, Upper East Side. Very small. I don't have the exact size, but let's say a few thousand square feet.
That's what it looks like. Yeah.
Yeah. So they're not carrying inventory. I think they do some click and collect, but most of it is you're going in to meet with a design specialist who's going to, help you figure out what you need for your apartment or your townhouse or whatever. And then they order stuff online and it gets shipped to you. So it's basically an IKEA showroom.
Got it.
So those are the three kind of major categories for IKEA expansion. They were doing for a while, those big ones, like 1 or 2 a year in the US, kind of have slowed that down. I think the future focus for them is going to be urban in the US. So I think we're going to see more of these smaller, both the design showrooms and then the smaller format ones, like they have in Queens. You should go to the one in Red Hook, though, because that's a big in Brooklyn. That's the big traditional IKEA. Plus, you can take the ferry to get there if you go from the city.
Oh, wow. I have to say, James, IKEA sounds like they're totally on the money when it comes to the trends in retail, right? First of all, the downsizing and then the showroom. It looks like they are ahead of the game in every way and are making sure that they cater to their customers' needs and what the customer wants. So just a quick shout out to them. It looks like they're doing great.
Yeah. They're really smart, and they're super global. So I've only been sort of focusing on what they're doing in the US, but actually Wall Street Journal just reported on 2 new format IKEA stores, one that just opened in Shanghai and another that opened in Vienna, Austria. So what's interesting about both these stores, they're different from each other, but they have one thing in common, is that they're breaking away from an IKEA tradition. So here's your first retail challenge question. What tradition are they breaking away from? 1, are all of the items pre-assembled? Because we know traditionally everything at IKEA is disassembled, flat pack, and you have to put it together at home. So is it 1, the items have been assembled? 2, there's no cafe with Swedish meatballs. Instead, there's a hip Swedish gastropub. Or 3, the stores are not organized like a continuous maze. Instead, you can just walk directly to the department that you're interested in. So which of those is true? Pre-assembled items, no Swedish meatballs, or not a labyrinth?
I don't think it's the meatballs because, again, as someone who's never shopped there, that's the first thing I thought of. So I feel like that would be a major L for them to break away from that brand, that aspect of their brand. So I don't think it's the meatballs. And I wonder, I'm going to go with the labyrinth just because, especially with the formats getting smaller, I feel like that might not be as necessary. So I'm going to choose 3.
You are correct. Down with the labyrinth. Instead, these stores seem to be organized more like a traditional department store where you can walk to whatever section of the store you're most interested in. Also, they're integrated with the IKEA app. So you can do wayfinding within the store through the IKEA app. All right. So 1 for 1 question. Number 1 down. Ebere, you have 1 point. Let's go into number 2. It's time to talk about what IKEA is most known for, which is assemble it yourself furniture, which I'm not a big fan of. I love IKEA. Don't get me wrong. I think the style is awesome. I am just, I'm a knowledge worker, Ebere. I can't do things with my hands. I have a lot of trouble assembling things like the Billy bookcase, which is IKEA. I think this has got to be their most popular item. Sure. Another one is the Klippen sofa. That's another popular one. So everything in IKEA has a proper name, like the Billy, for example. So where do these names come from? Why do they have these kinds of names for things at IKEA? So here's your choices. 1, each item is named after a famous person from Swedish history. 2, the founder of IKEA was dyslexic and found it easier to remember proper names instead of a product code number. Or 3, the names are acronyms for well wishes for purchases. For example, Billy is an acronym for best in long-lasting youth. So, is it famous people from Swedish history? The founder found it easier to remember dyslexic or proper names because he was dyslexic, or is it an acronym?
I really don't know. I don't even know what Swedish names sound like. I'm thinking like Lundqvist or like Heinrich, right? So Billy does not strike me as Swedish. So maybe I'll go with the dyslexic answer just because I feel like, yeah, that seems the most plausible.
Alrighty, Barry, you're killing it. That's absolutely true. The founder of IKEA was dyslexic and found it easier to remember proper names. Makes perfect sense. Hey Joe, we're out of 98765, is a lot more difficult to remember than we need more Billies in aisle 3,
Exactly.
Okay, final question is about a sales technique which is embraced at IKEA. It's something called bulla bulla. So I'm going to ask you, what is bulla bulla? Here's your choices. 1, getting lost in a labyrinth that wears you down and wears down your resistance to say no to things. 2, items are purposefully jumbled into a bin to make them appear more plentiful and inexpensive. Or 3, having a cafe with food makes you want to spend more money.
What was the first one again? I'm sorry.
Yeah, getting lost wears down your resistance.
I've heard about. I feel like that's another thing I've heard about IKEA is like getting so frustrated when you're there. I feel like I've heard so many stories.
Yeah, like I'm trying to remember what sitcom it was, but there's an episode of a sitcom I've seen where it's just a couple, going through a breakup in IKEA.
Exactly. That's my another thing I think about them is just so exhausting. There's so many items there. It just is the perfect fodder for an argument with a couple that's already going through it. So I'm going to guess that one. I'm going to guess it's wearing you down.
Actually, no. It's the items are purposefully jumbled together in a bin to make them feel more plentiful and inexpensive.
Really?
But Ebere, you still got 2 out of 3 correct, isn't that right? So you are our winner.
I love this graphic.
Yep. This week, you're winning a virtual selection of Swedish meatballs from IKEA.
Yum.
There's what I love is like I was looking up the kinds of meatballs they have. One is just called meat. Another one is chicken. Another one is cod, I think. You're not a seafood fan, are you?
I'm becoming more of one in recent years, definitely.
Okay, so maybe you'll enjoy your cod, virtual cod Swedish meatballs.
I don't think so, but
but great work and good luck for those of you who are playing along at home. Alexis says, "Great job, Ebere." All right, so where were we? I lost track of what we're talking about. That's the end of the show. So. Hey guys, if you want more retail trends, hits, tips, research, check out our in-depth podcast. It's called Where We Buy. It's at wherewebuy.show. The next episode that's going to be dropping this week is about Santa Monica and how they're changing zoning in Santa Monica for 3rd Street Promenade, which is a cool shopping space and totally worth checking out.
For sure. You can also hit the subscribe button on YouTube and make sure that you click on the little bell icon so that you're notified when new shows come out every week. Alternatively, you have the option of following JLO Retail on LinkedIn. And if all of that is too difficult for you, you can always find new episodes every Thursday at 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 p.m. Eastern at everythingweknow.show.
Thanks to everybody who is watching live, and there's many folks who will also watch in the replay as well. Just thanks to all of you for watching along, and join us next week, 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 Eastern, Thursday. Ebere, what else do you know about retail?
James.